Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and today I'm going to tell you how I felt about the new Star Trek pilot for Strange New Worlds. The first two episodes are up, and I have seen them both. I'm going to primarily talk about just the first episode, and I'm going to do this without spoilers, or with real minor spoilers, at least for the sign flip, and then I might get into a little bit of spoiler territory after that. I'll just give you a spoiler warning. So I was really reluctant to do this. I was really reluctant to even watch this because I've been burned so much by NuTrek, and I'm somewhat notorious for my disdain for where Star Trek has been going since Discovery, and I gave that show a chance, of course. I was really excited about it, somewhat trepidatiously initially, and it didn't work out so well. It's gotten worse and worse as it's gone along. At least the couple seasons I saw, I got a little bit of the way into season 3 and just couldn't do it anymore. Picard, I liked the first episode okay, and then it really all went downhill from there, and the first season of that was, I thought, one of the worst things ever, and then the second season was even crazier and less cohesive and more insulting and worse than that, and I couldn't even believe it, and I had even more of a disillusionment with that, where I was like, okay, like, Star Trek's really, really dead, and I don't know if I even, want to be a Star Trek fan anymore, to some degree. I mean, like, I'm always going to have, love for the Star Trek I like, the stuff that I can actually consider Star Trek, and I didn't think I would ever totally be, like, where Mike from Red Letter Media has said that he is. I haven't watched his last review for Picard yet, but in the penultimate review, he was like, yeah, after this, I don't even know if I ever want to go back and watch Star Trek again. And, like, I felt that broken watching season 1, and I still have gone back to Star Trek, so I guess if it was going to happen to me, it was going to happen to me then. But I still just, I've been kind of crushed by it. I've been real depressed by it. Whenever I bring it up on the channel or somebody asks about it on the Captain Logan show, I've gotten really just kind of inarticulate and bogged down, and it's been difficult not to just kind of spin my wheels and go, I just can't even anymore. And it's been like that with all of these. Prodigy, I tried a few episodes, couldn't do it anymore. Lower Decks, I couldn't get past the first 10 minutes of the second episode. Strange New Worlds, with the advertising and with what little I had read about pre-production, sounded different, but I certainly didn't trust it. It's the same people making this that's making everything else. It seemed like just massive damage control. Oh, okay, I guess what you guys really want is more lighthearted Star Trek, get back to the kind of like nostalgic heartstring pulling that we did with 09 and those movies. We don't really want to make that. We don't really like Star Trek, but I guess if that's what we have to do to keep people interested, since this all seems to be crashing and burning, even though we're pretending like it's popular, I guess that's what we'll do. It seemed like a real forced kind of pushback against the thinly veiled dystopian and just really, really poorly written science fiction they were doing. I've said this before, but if I could have enjoyed Discovery and even Picard as good dystopian science fiction, regardless of it not really being Star Trek, but the stories were good, fine. I'd be disappointed, but at least I could watch it and appreciate it on some level, but the writing is horrible. There's no characterization. I don't know who any of these people are much of the time. They don't act like real people. Conversations don't follow. A person will say a thing, and then the next thing that's said doesn't seem remotely related. I don't understand what's happening. So Strange New Worlds, I was like, I really don't want to bother with it. I really don't trust it. And then I got, and I wasn't sure if I would, and then I got a super chat on the Captain Logan show last week from Dylan the Villain, and he said, are you going to check out Strange New Worlds? I've seen the first 2 episodes, and it's pretty refreshing and feels like classic Star Trek. And I said, thanks for the super chat. I don't believe you. And I was too curious, and I had to do it. And so I went ahead and watched the pilot. And wouldn't you know it, he's kind of right. And I don't understand it. It shouldn't be possible. It makes absolutely no sense. By the way, welcome if you're watching live right now. I see quite a few viewers, but no comments yet, so I'm going to refresh my page here just in case people are commenting and I'm not seeing the comments, but if you want to weigh in on this, feel free to leave a comment or a super chat, and I will try to chat along with you, but doesn't look like we've gotten any yet. So I guess everybody's just listening intently. Anyway, so, unless something is broken down here and I just can't see the chat, I'm not sure what's going on, if anything. So, anyway, yeah, I was baffled by the opening scene because Pike is, and again, I'll try not to give too much away before I do my sign flip, but Pike is having a conversation with a lady friend on Earth. He's opining, having seen the future in Discovery, where he knows that he's going to end up crippled and in the wheelchair, and he won't tell her about that. He's keeping that really close to the vest. He tells everybody that it's classified, which is code for "I don't want to talk about it." He says that even to his superiors, even to the admiral that he'll see right after that, who I don't want to tell you anything yet, but anyway, it's gonna be really hard not to just jump immediately into details with this, but they're having this really kind of nice back and forth. The banter is decent. They're talking about things. It feels like maybe a story. It feels like real people talking to each other, and it's not pandery, and it's not insulting, and it's not a bunch of platitudes where people aren't talking about anything. Like they're actually discussing events and their own personal feelings about a situation, and they feel like reasonable people, and I'm liking them, and I'm feeling something, and I'm going, this isn't possible. This doesn't make sense. Like, Dylan, I apologize, man. I really appreciate your super chat. I didn't believe you. I really didn't. I didn't think this was possible. And I was like, I mean, I don't want to get my hopes up over one scene, but it watches like real television, much less real Star Trek. And then the intro happens, and it's this kind of updated, modern version of the TOS theme that it kind of dances around the melody a little bit, almost as if it doesn't have the rights to the melody. But sometimes it's the real actual melody. But like, it looks nice, and it's not pretentious like the other shows have been. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's something here. And then fast forward to the end, and I was pretty engaged. I was pretty into it. It's real Star Trek in every sense of the word. I said the other night on a live cast that it's almost Star Trek. I've watched it a couple more times, and I will update that and say that the more I'm seeing it, the more I'm really enjoying it. And I've seen the second episode, and the quality seems to continue because Picard was a fluke. The very next episode, it completely falls apart. Did not happen with this. And I'm just thrilled. The cast is really eclectic and interesting. There's a lot of creative ideas going on with each of these characters, and it's just a really cool, likable group of people. Feels like a real ensemble Star Trek cast, and the best way I can describe it is it's kind of what I wanted after Enterprise, or what I thought I wanted after Enterprise when it had been on just a couple of seasons, because that show always watched to me, and I've said this a lot of times before, like a sequel that takes place in the past. It, from the beginning, seems to be paving over the original timeline. It's a time travel show. The Enterprise NX-01 launches before it's supposed to, and in fact, it really shouldn't even be in NX-01, but whatever, as far as original continuity goes. And it was an okay show. I liked things about it, but it didn't fit with the continuity, and it seemed to know it until it decided later, when Manny Koto took over, that it wasn't that, and that it had to fit with the rest of continuity. And and what I wanted was a remake of TOS, as if Enterprise had happened. And that's what this is, just straight up. It's really weird that I'm finally kind of getting that. It's much less a because I'm seeing articles saying that it's like the longest pickup in history. If you look at the pilot, if you look at the Cage is the pilot for this show, because we finally have a show starring Pike and Number One and Spock, and so it's like the Cage the series. Not really. It's much more what TOS might have been if Roddenberry decided not to recast Jeffrey Hunter and create a new captain in Captain Kirk, played by William Shatner, because the sensibilities of it are much more original series. Volume 2, the second pilot, where No Man Has Gone Before, after the studio notes of it needs to be more lighthearted, it needs to be more action-driven, it needs to be less cerebral. And this show is certainly not entirely uncerebral. I will say it's a good. I can't even believe I'm saying this. It's a good pilot. It's a good story. It avoids. It's a decent story. I'll say pretty derivative. There's not a lot new here, but I'll take it. I mean, the ways in which it's ripping off decent Star Trek is a really good step in the right direction. Certainly, I'll take that over sidestepping and doing as little actual science fiction storytelling as possible. The big difference between Pike and the character they're calling Picard in Picard is that Pike likes science fiction and wants to explore the universe and has a curious mind, which Picard did too, back when he was actually Picard. I love Anson Mount. I love him so much. This happened because everybody that saw Discovery Season 2 was enamored with him and was like, why can't this just be the show? Like, you bring in the original Enterprise and suddenly it feels like and don't get me wrong, Star Trek should have a little bit of an edge to it, but it felt lighthearted, it felt wholesome, and it felt like people that actually wanted to be there and maybe liked each other a little bit, even if they had some conflict. There should be some internal, inner character conflict, interpersonal conflict. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be the first season of TNG. I really don't want it to be that. But does everybody have to hate each other for no good reason in Star Trek? Why are we doing that? I mean, does it have to be like that in anything? But especially Star Trek. Anyway, so Pike is... I'm trying to get my thoughts together because I have like 1,000 things I want to say about this. So, like I said, it's not exactly the Cage the series. That's what I think they thought they were making with Discovery. And it didn't really work out. And so I'm glad that they didn't try that again. In a perfect world, with somebody else at the helm, and if we didn't already have Discovery, what I might like to have seen with Pike would be, what if the studio was completely okay with the Cage and that was the show that went to series? What if it was a little bit more understated, a little bit more cerebral in the first place, wasn't so much of an action show? Which is funny, people don't think of Star Trek as an action thing, but back in '66 it was definitely thought of as much an action adventure as it was a thoughtful science fiction series. And so this is more Pike's Enterprise through the lens of TOS, and especially through the lens of Star Trek 09. You know what? It's better than that. It really is, because it's not super action driven. It's modernized in the same way the Abrams movies are, and some of the humor is real similar to that. There's a bit with Nurse Chapel chasing somebody down a hallway that reminded me a lot of McCoy chasing Kirk in Star Trek 09, trying to get him with a hypo spray. So there's some stuff like that. It's more fast-paced in places than a typical TOS episode, but I don't know, the overall pacing is a little more that way. It's finding a really interesting balance between the 60s sensibilities and it certainly got an interesting kind of 60s Art Deco look, but updated. And characterization-wise, it's that way too. Like, it's the 60s, Star Trek, but through our more modern sensibilities. And it's not yet, anyway, I'm hoping it won't be, horribly preachy about it, like Discovery and Picard have been. We're not throwing anybody under the bus to make a big social point. We're so much more thoughtful in this, and again, I didn't think that was possible. Akiva Goldsman wrote and directed this pilot. I usually really dislike him, and I've heard him say some really kind of asinine things about Picard, where he's making a different show than he thinks he's making, and he worked a lot on that too, and a lot of the names on this, Kristen Beyer, a lot of the names on this, producers and writers and stuff, are the same as Picard. They went right off Picard and made this. And it's so much. It's like a completely different crew came in and was like, no, this is how you do it. This is what Star Trek is supposed to be. And let me also reiterate that the most important thing I care about is just that there's actually some. That characters are real people and that there's a real story being told. And the Star Trek of it is secondary, especially now, after 5 years of the nonsense we've been getting. If I could just follow a story, I'm going to already like your show a lot more. And with this, I more than could follow the story. And the lore felt like Star Trek stuff. People are talking about science, there's technobabble stuff, and everything makes sense, and is like people had seen Star Trek before. It's like, this is Pike's 5-year mission, and it's like Kurtzman already had a 5-year mission and completely and utterly failed at it, and now we're on our second 5-year mission, and the beginning of it seems like it's okay. I'm really wondering if this is going to translate at all to their other shows, or if this is all we get. If it's just, this is for the people that want this kind of Star Trek. It seems like the big difference is with them in their attitude of it is just that it's episodic this time. I'm still not seeing comments, so I'm not sure if nobody's commenting or if I'm having trouble on my end. But my apologies if people are trying to comment. I'm going to bring up the actual video and just make sure, because I don't mean to be presumptuous and say, hey, you should be commenting. But if anybody's trying to talk to me while I'm doing this, I want to make sure that you can be heard. But anyway, give me just a second, folks. Yeah, I am getting comments, and they're not showing up on my normal end, so I don't know why that is. Anyway, it's like the big difference for them is just that it's episodic, right? They made a big deal out of that this time we're not going to tell one overarching story over several episodes. And they've been no good at that so far. Like the overarching stories are not cohesive. They keep pivoting between episodes. They seem to be completely making it up as they go along. The end doesn't match the beginning much of the time, and there are always these kinds of mystery box plots, or there's a big bad in the background. I wonder who it's going to be. They're always way too big. They're never true science fiction stories or very rarely with interesting Sorry, I'm distracted because I'm moving in my other screen. They're very rarely interesting science fiction stories about any kind of ethical conundrums. And again, the people just don't tend to act like real people. And now they go, well, we'll do overarching in that characters will remember what happened last episode, and we might have character arcs through the many adventures, but each episode will be a self-contained story. I'm not saying that Star Trek always has to be that. DS9, obviously, of course, and then Enterprise Season 3 got much, much more archy than that, where you'd have several part episodes, where one episode did absolutely not stand alone. So I'm not saying that you're not Star Trek if you don't do it that way. I'm saying that maybe they needed to go back to the kind of back to formula with Star Trek, back to brass tacks, to get a sense of how to really do it. These don't seem like people who initially at the face of it appreciated or understood Star Trek or understood it more than just superficially. And I think maybe what happened here, this is my guess, is somebody who hadn't actually done their homework finally did their homework. This watches like somebody watched TOS and suddenly got it. Like, there was a switch that flipped in maybe Kurtzman's head, maybe Akiva Goldman's head. I think he's basically show running the show. I know Kurtzman's name is on all of these, but he's got a co-creating credit, and I think maybe he's mostly running this. So I don't know, maybe it's better with him at the helm, but I thought Picard was mostly him too, so I don't know, and that's still really strange in my brain. The other thing that's possible is that Kurtzman got out of the way, and that he's not really all that involved with this one because he's holding the reins of other shows. Again, no way to know for sure what's happening behind the scenes with all of that, but I suspect there's a possibility with that because even with writers that I have liked in the past working on some of these shows, a lot of the scripts are baffling in the same way, almost as if somebody's going in and rewriting things and doctoring them. And I don't want to be all conspiracy theory. I don't know if that's happening, but it's shades of Roddenberry back in the, well, TOS had this problem. TNG also majorly had this problem where Roddenberry would rework and rewrite scripts when he wasn't supposed to, and would tick off writers and make them leave. And we've lost lots and lots of crew especially in the creative side, on these shows. So it's possible that's what's been going on and that it's not happening here. At any rate, somehow I got a coherent Star Trek pilot, and dare I say, actually one of the better ones. Like I said, of all of Star Trek, and I can't even believe I'm saying that, it avoids a lot of standard pitfalls because it helps that it's a direct spin-off, that it's a character that we've dealt with before in these shows, post-Discovery, but I guess Discovery's still on, but I just mean after his episodes with Pike in that show. But we're not just introducing characters and having kind of a cookie-cutter story underneath it. It tells a kind of classic and, again, pretty derivative Prime Directive story about a planet that has two warring factions. We've seen this 1,000 times, and one side gets a hold of warp technology. But the big twist is that, and I'll just give you this for the setup of it, the big twist is that it's not warp drive, but it's a warp bomb, and they've learned how to do it. And this is the really silly, stupid part that doesn't work, I don't think, but they've somehow reverse-engineered warp technology just by seeing a bunch of Federation starships in the sky using it. And again, that's silly, whatever, but there's your conceit, there's your premise, and so it's kind of an interesting Prime Directive conundrum in trying to decide how much the Prime Directive actually applies. And so it's not this huge story. There's not a giant bad guy doing machinations in the background. There's no future guy like with Enterprise. It's not a Klingon story. It's not a Romulan story. It's just we go to this planet and we're trying to make first contact, and we find a Federation ship had already tried to was actually not making first contact because they didn't have warp travel yet. That's the whole point. But that were investigating this planet like we do, researching it, and oh no, we've accidentally messed with their natural evolution as a species, with their natural social evolution. What do we do? How much of the Prime Directive applies? How much should we actually come in and interfere now because we're partly responsible, but we don't want to make the situation worse? That's kind of a classic Star Trek idea, a good thing to do for a pilot where you really need to convince an audience, whether they realize it or not, that you know what episodic Star Trek stories look like. And I don't know, just starting back with a Prime Directive thing, I think is the smart way to go. But all the characters that they decide to use get something interesting to do. Everybody is unique and has their own ingenuity and resourcefulness. Uhura gets a great moment. Nurse Chapel gets a great moment. And then the characters that they decide not to utilize because it's pretty smart storytelling, because they just have too many people in their show for the story they're telling. They just introduce at the end. And it's a little easy and kind of funny that we have two main cast members that right at the very end we just drop into the show. Here's I don't want to tell you who yet if you haven't seen the show yet, but there's two people that just aren't really needed for this, so we introduced them at the end. But we kind of did that even with the pilot for TNG, where it's like, we're not going to use Riker yet, we'll introduce him in the next part. And I was just surprised that there was a real story told. Like, if this was all you saw, you got a beginning, a middle, and an end out of it. And Pike himself gets a pretty decent character arc about trying to figure out how to navigate the future knowing about his own, he says death. Although it's weird that he talks about it like that, because Pike does not die when he gets in the wheelchair, and he's seeing that his future is he's crippled and in a wheelchair. So it is a little strange that he talks about it that way. I don't know if that's supposed to just say something about his character, that he's gonna feel like his life is over, so he's talking about it like he's dead. But the A story with the people on the planet that are about to destroy themselves with a warp bomb is tied directly into Pike knowing about his future and trying to decide if he wants to try to prevent it or not, and what do you do if you know your own fate. And it's directly connected to that. We have I'm trying not to give too much away, but we have converging thematic ideas and converging subplots by the end of the episode. This is basic television writing, but I have to give them like huge accolades for basic television writing, because they haven't been able to do it all along, and it's the same people, and now they've done it. It's a real television show. It's amazing. Also, one of the things coming into this that I was really concerned about was the whole stupid thing with Pike got time crystals on Boreth. I hate it, and sees his own future, because we have to do that. He's got to know about the big horrible thing that's going to happen to him, because it's all anybody knows about Pike. And now he's going to be saddled with that through this TV show. And what do you know? We got thoughtful about it. We made it a science fiction idea. There's a wonderful scene between him and Spock where Spock has a speech to him about how he's going to have to learn how to continue to be the captain. I mean, he says, I think, exactly what Spock in the original series would have said if this had happened to Pike or Kirk. It also immediately makes him different from Kirk. It sets them apart in a really interesting way, where Kirk does not believe in the no-win scenario. Pike has to, because he's seen it, and yet maybe he can prevent it now that he knows that it's going to happen. But should he, because of all the people he's going to save when that happens to him? And he has this great speech where he says, I'm afraid, like, he doesn't even know if he wants to get back in command, and he gets back in begrudgingly, and only because of a mission that he feels like he has to do. And I bought all of that, where he's not sure if this is going to make him too impulsive or make him not careful enough. And I don't know, it's just suddenly I felt like I was watching Star Trek. It was making me think about things, and it's not a sappy way to handle a fate versus free will thing. And the last thing I thought I'd say about these guys making these Star Trek shows is that it didn't get too sappy. Enterprise is the most obvious comparison tonally. I mentioned '09 earlier. It watches like Star Trek Beyond if it was a series, because I adore that movie, and it updates TOS in the same way that this does. And it's not too obnoxiously action-driven, although there is some really great action in that movie. But it stops and discusses things and has some downtime and lets characters' relationships bud and progress like this is doing. And it's the same kind of fun, and I just didn't think that was possible. Why on earth could this not have been what we got back in 2017? It's really frustrating to me, but I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. Like, if this is all the decent Star Trek I get from these guys, at least we got this. And I said that with Picard, where, like, if the only good episode is that pilot, at least we got that. But the pilot was retroactively ruined by the rest of it, because it is indeed one story over several episodes, and over a season, and this isn't that. So I actually can say that with this, but also, the second episode's pretty good, too. It's an Uhura episode. I like that actress a lot. I think she's better than Zoe Saldana, and I like Saldana in the Guardians movies now, but I just like the characterization with her better. I will say that I noticed that a lot of the Enterprise character archetypes kind of end up informing these characters, and they're unique and different enough, most of them, but it is kind of odd that, like, Uhura is just Hoshi again, and Hoshi was sort of Uhura, except this Uhura is... I guess '09 did this too, though, where she was like a prodigy and could speak a bazillion different languages and seemed to be able to figure out languages really, really quickly, just like Hoshi. But this character also has the Hoshi insecurities and hang-ups about space that Hoshi had, where she's not sure that she belongs on a starship, and she's a little bit antsy about being in space. And then La'an, who I came around on very quickly. I wasn't sure about her, and her backstory with the Gorn and everything is really interesting. Let me just go ahead and say I'm feeling it, put up my green sign, and I'll go ahead and start getting more into spoilery stuff here. I can't even believe that I'm doing this. And this is not even a lukewarm sign flip. This is decent. Like, it ain't the best Star Trek I've ever seen, of course. It ain't brilliant. Some of it is pretty obvious and is doing the same thing the '09 movies did in being very much about nostalgia first. But I think it's... Well, I don't even want to say nostalgia first. I just mean that there are a lot of places where they're kind of hinging on that, hedging their bets on nostalgia. I didn't need... We do have some prequel stuff, some prequelitis-y stuff. I didn't need an explanation for why General Order 1... Again, I'm going to go ahead and do spoilers now. Why General Order 1 is now called the Prime Directive. Like, both things applied. It wasn't like we stopped using General Order 1 and now it's the Prime Directive. I mean, yeah, the later shows don't use General Order 1 a lot, but, like, they're just synonyms. We didn't need an explanation for that. That's kind of silly. But it also, but also give it this. I think it handles nostalgia better than those movies, in that some of it is just being authentic to what TOS felt like, and I don't think it's super forced about it. I love the score. There's a lot of just straight up TOS stings and beats, but again, really modernized and not a bunch of repeated phrases and stuff. Like, it's a whole cloth new score all the way through, and it's big and bombastic, and it sounds like TOS in the best possible way. I really like what the ship looks like. I talked to Adam about this the other day, and he said that he wishes this is what '09 had looked like. I agree with him. It's a really pretty show. There's a shot at the end of a starbase that's gorgeous. It looks like starbases have always kind of looked, but it's got a lot of detail that we've never seen before. I'm kind of beside myself, and I'm being more won over on the actor playing Spock. That is Ethan Peck. I didn't like him in Discovery. They made him all emo and broody, and he didn't seem even at all like a Vulcan. And he's channeling Nimoy a lot more in this, but not trying to do a Nimoy, certainly. I think even more than Quinto, he's kind of doing his own thing, and I want to say I actually think that the longer I live with him, I might find myself liking him more than Quinto. It does feel weird, and even Quinto had a deeper voice, I think, than Nimoy. It is weird to have a Spock with, like, this super deep bass voice, but I'm getting used to it, and he's just getting the right material. Like, I'm learning that these guys know how to cast before they know how to write. These are all really great actors. I think everybody in this show is quite good. But I said a minute ago that we have kind of Enterprise archetypes. If you put... This is now for folks that have seen this, but if you put M'Benga and Nurse Chapel together, you get Phlox. Like, with M'Benga, you get Phlox's optimism, and with Chapel, you get his quirkiness. You put them together, and it's that character. La'an, I started to make this point earlier, is really just Malcolm Reed with a more tragic background. I don't guess there's exactly a Mayweather here, but I think there's like 4 or 5 Enterprise archetypes, and then Pike is what I think Archer should have been. And like I said, he's just wonderful. He's like he's somewhere between Jeffrey Hunter's Pike and Kirk. He's got that same kind of optimism, of course, and that spirit of, I'm hesitating to use the word discovery, but also adventure, but he's more tempered because of what he knows about the future. I'm shocked that I'm won over by all that. I'm going to see what folks are saying in the comments here, and I'm not able to see all the comments, it doesn't look like, but I'm getting some of them by looking at the video page. I just don't know why my back end, I'm going to try refreshing this one more time, isn't giving me comments. Sorry about that. Let's see, Alex409, I think the show benefited from the CBS remerger with Paramount, which was the studio who actually made Star Trek. Yeah, but that happened before the second season of Picard, and I really thought it might affect that, and it didn't seem to have. But maybe you're right. Maybe too much of that was made before all of that happened. It really does feel like something major has to have changed to have allowed this. I haven't gotten much into criticisms. I will say that you have to watch this as a full-on reboot. And I think not just of original canon, but also, and yeah, they're still trying to act like everything they've made somehow fits with the rest of continuity, and a lot of it just doesn't. But you even have to look at it as a reboot after Discovery, because it doesn't even fit with that, which is fine for me, but they have all kinds of technologies in that they're just ignoring in this because they got too ahead of themselves in that, and it's not just about what they're able to do, but just the aesthetic and just what it looks like. We're wanting to do a TOS kind of reboot thing here, so we can't have people like using holographic panels up in the air like we do in Discovery and in Picard. Why does everything seem so antiquated compared to Discovery when this is happening after a few seasons of that show? Well, it's because they're kind of wishing that they could have just straight up rebooted and started with this, because this is a totally different vision, but they can't, so they're just hoping that nobody minds too much. And you already had that a little bit. Like, Pike's Enterprise shows up in Discovery, and it looks like it came from a different universe. It's bizarre. It's almost like they have a different fleet for people who aren't cynical. That's what it always felt like to me. And so now we're seeing that show. It's going to be weird if they do any Discovery crossover. I mean, I guess I haven't watched season 4, so I don't know what's happened with those characters. I assume they're still 1,000 years in the future. But if they do anything with other ships we've seen before in Discovery and things like that, I wonder if we'll see a blend of aesthetics, or if we'll stay just with this and other ships will look like this Enterprise. I kind of hope we do that. I kind of hope we do just keep ignoring the Discovery aesthetic. I don't think you can do this show without getting the Klingons at some point. That's such a major component of TOS, and I hope they straight up reinvent them completely. Why not? They already half reinvented them for Discovery Season 2 when people didn't accept the bald Egyptian thing, and they stopped having them speak Klingon so much because that was driving everybody insane. And so maybe they'll just throw their hands in the air and go, okay, whatever, let's just do the, 4 headless Klingons after all, and move along. Maybe they'll even do some kind of gap bridging thing between the Enterprise Klingons and this, because the one thing this is, like I said earlier, really consistent with is Enterprise. All the way down to we have an Anar on the ship, and that's one of the characters that's introduced right at the end of the episode. You have Sam Kirk, who they've been building up the whole episode. Oh, Kirk's coming, and oh, it's Sam Kirk. Which is funny because then they're going to give us actual Captain Kirk in the second season, or not, he won't be a captain yet, but they'll give us James Kirk in the second season. And I rolled my eyes at that initially, where I was like, when I learned that before the show came out, where I was like, okay, just like with Spock, they've got to throw their hands in the air and come up with any gimmicks to try to get people to keep watching. It feels really desperate, and now not so much after I've seen this, because it watches like a decent reboot. So you go, okay, there's no reason that Pike can't meet Kirk, I guess, if you're rebooting anyway, and they're not going to have him totally take over the ship. He's going to be a recurring character before he is added to the cast, as far as I understand it. But yeah, there is all kinds of stuff that just doesn't fit with the rest of Star Trek canon. Again, don't want to be a prude about it, and excited to get something that is fun to watch, so I don't care. But I'll talk about it anyway for a second if you're interested. Part of the reason you have to look at this as a straight-on reboot is because there's just too many TOS characters that are all here from the beginning that can't have that much history on this ship before Kirk comes on. And also because it feels tonally too much like Kirk's Enterprise before you get to Kirk. Pike's Enterprise just would have had a different feel to it. And so, and it was a different era that was a little bit darker before you get to Kirk's era. So I don't know. I'm not sure why all these people would be so excited to explore in like a third 5-year mission once they get to Kirk. It seems like they've kind of been there and done all of that at that point. But you have things like, okay, M'Benga is already there. And then when, and I love him, by the way, he seems like a lot of fun, but then we're gonna, and like, little things, or maybe not so little things, like, I don't remember him having a really thick African accent, so, canonically, I guess he just loses that at some point. Is that a different Mr. Kyle, or does Mr. Kyle's ethnicity change by the time you get to TOS, right? Gotta look at it as a reboot. And then but yeah, like, so M'Benga's there, and then I guess when McCoy gets there, M'Benga's just going to be fine with being sidestepped as a secondary doctor instead of the primary physician as he's been for a decade before. Unless he's only there for a couple of years and leaves and comes back later and maybe gets demoted for some reason. Maybe he'll tell a story where he does something horrible and he's barely even allowed to stay in the service. I don't know. That's not the doctor that's there in the cage. We have another guy who's there for a couple minutes and leaves. In TOS, you get the sense that you have a lot of crew changing on starships. And in this show, it feels like Starfleet's got about 40 officers that they go through. I probably should mention the T'Pring thing, because I got really leery of that and really nervous about the whole show when that was the second scene. When your second scene is T'Pring, and again, it looks like these people actually watch TOS, and even though they're contradicting some things just so they can use the characters they want and tell the stories they want, they still seem to know. That's a big difference. I think they know what rules they're breaking, and so it's much easier for me to appreciate what I'm watching. But your second scene is T'Pring proposes to Spock, and I'm like, I don't know. First of all, it seems like you're trying to. That's the one thing that felt kind of forced progressiveness a little bit, like some of the other shows, where it's like we have to have to propose to Spock so that we can say, look, we're not, your father's TOS, your father's Star Trek. It's not. It's more modern. It's not traditional values. We can, flip the script with stuff like that. Why couldn't the woman propose? Well, maybe if you did that with humans, but it's a betrothal. On Vulcan, you had arranged marriages. And I don't know if it's still an arranged marriage, but then that's just a ritual thing where the woman proposes. That's weird, and that it would be so, like, Western Earth centric, where she uses the words "Will you marry me?" I don't know. I didn't buy any of that. But then, and again, in a reboot, I'm more okay with it. But then, I kind of liked her, and she has the same motivations that she does in TOS, where I wasn't even sure in TOS if they'd ever met before, because it's an arranged marriage, but with this, they actually do really like each other, and they're in love, and they are excited to get married regardless of whether it's a betrothal, or whether it's an arranged marriage, and then she immediately is... And not, like, obnoxious about it, but just isn't happy that he's gone all the time. And that's going to be the whole reason that that she leaves him for Stonn in Amok Time. I am nervous about their kind of Amok Time remake, Amok Time, because, like, I get that it's 10 years before TOS, so Spock's going to have to go through a Pon farr, but... You're telling me every single time there's a Pon farr, there also has to be a battle to the death? Like, we kind of made a big deal out of the fact that we don't... That's ancient. That's old-fashioned. We can do it, but it doesn't happen very often. We're going to do it again. The 4th episode's going to go there. So, it's going to be a couple weeks before we see what happens with that. If it's terrible, I'm glad we're getting it out of the way early. But anyway, I'm going to try to see what folks are saying in the comments here, because I'm not able to look at them the way I usually do. I haven't been looking at them as much as I usually do. Indiana Trekker, I prefer Peck over Quinto. We will never have another Nimoy. Well, yes, of course, yeah. And I want to see a guy just do his own thing to some degree, instead of trying to ape Nimoy. Absolutely. But I just need to kind of buy that he, embodies the spirit and the ideas of the character, and I think at least 50% of that is on the page. Maybe 30 or 40. I mean, I don't want to throw the actor under the bus and say that his job's not important. It absolutely is, and that's a hard role to play. RJ Godzilla, Cap, do you think the audience will be there for this show, or have the people who would watch been driven away by Picard, Discovery, etc.? I'm hoping word of mouth helps if people feel the way I do about it. If I'm not alone, and old Star Trek fans that have not accepted... Because some of them have accepted this other stuff, but those of us, and I think there's not a small complement of us, that have said, yeah, this stuff is not Star Trek. I can't even consider it canon. I'm not buying it. I'm not doing it. If we can get some more of us to watch this show and we all agree on that, maybe word of mouth will spread and we can get people to go, new Star Trek starts here. But that's also assuming it stays good. We could have just gotten lucky with these first couple episodes. I hope not, but it's hard to trust this crew, these creators. So I've just been burned so much. I don't want to get blindsided when it happens again. But I'm cautiously optimistic about this after 2 episodes. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be an uphill battle. Absolutely. I also think that if this is the new direction for Star Trek and we really ignore the nonsense of the past, after a couple of years, we could maybe really get there. It's not the Orville. It ain't that good. Although, I think this and the Orville's pilot are maybe on par. I can't even believe I'm saying that. So, I mean, it has the potential to get there. I had a lot of people after my major disappointment and outright outright anger with Discovery, and especially the second season, and then Picard, say, look, Star Trek has always had a history of having a hard time to find its footing. That you always get a couple of seasons before it gets good. And my rebuttal for that with Discovery was, these people aren't, I don't mean to repeat myself, but like, these people aren't even telling stories. It's real pandery and preachy, and I don't even know what they think the message is, but they seem a lot more interested in some kind of like preaching of ideology and just preaching to a choir. Like, they don't even want everyone to watch their show. It feels like propaganda before it feels like television. It's weird, and so I didn't buy the premise that they just needed some time to figure things out, especially because of all the turmoil behind the scenes. And in Discovery Season 3, that was still the case, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse as it went along. Same thing with Picard. And also, keep in mind, Picard's only got 3 seasons, so, like, how long is it going to take you to find your footing? These aren't the kinds of things that should take that long to find footing. It's not episodic television. Ironically, the one that seems to have kind of figured itself out more or less right away is the episodic show. Like, usually what happens with serialized television, at least these days, is you'll get a brilliant first season that feels like it's been on forever, and then maybe the second season is okay, and then after that they're resting on their laurels and they don't really have any more stories to tell. Discovery was supposed to be, we have this one season, a story, and maybe we'll make another season. This is traditional episodic television. If it was going to take you a while to figure out what you were doing to get your groove on, it'd be writing a bunch of episodes until you finally figure out how to tell these kinds of stories. So, I think it has the potential to just go up from here. Rainbow Nightmare, I'm watching Season 2 of The Orville based on the trailer of 3, and the clip, they've switched aspect ratio of 16:9 to 2:1. Interesting, I didn't know that. Yeah, please don't tell me anything, and thanks for not doing that, about the trailer for Orville, because Brandon sent me a message about that and said that it gives too much away, and so I don't want to watch it. I'm very excited about that season, and it's coming soon, and I need to catch up on my rewatch for Orville before that comes out. Speed 321. It seems like people are more or less in the comments agreeing with my assessment of this over the other shows. The difference between this and the other ones, especially Discovery, has been a willingness yourself rather than screaming the answer at you. Thank you. That's exactly right. And yeah, giving the audience some credit, and also just being thoughtful about different people with different feelings and takes on things. So you've got this planet that is in kind of the same place we are in the 21st century, where or not exactly the same place, it's a little bit farther along in volatility, where people are very divided, and it turns into kind of a civil war, and one side thinks that it has the right ideology, the right morality, and wants to take out the other side, and it's using that to obviously talk about where we're at in our society, but it's not saying it's not telling you how you're supposed to feel about it, and it's not saying, let's cast this side as the liberals, this side as the conservatives, and have the right people, take the other side out. We don't even know what the ideologies are. It's just two warring factions, like we have a lot in Star Trek, right? They just are both on the same planet. And they go, whatever the problems are, the answer is always diplomacy. The answer is not violence. And that's what a progressive science fiction show and what Star Trek ought to be saying about it. Some people were laughing at it before it came out because it was a clip that came out showing footage of January 6th, which is like 2 or 3 seconds, and honestly, I didn't even realize that's what it was when that came up, but people were complaining that it's too on the nose, because Pike comes right out and shows footage of things happening right this very minute, saying, and in the context of the show, it works much, much better than if you just saw that footage, because yes, that does look way too on the nose. Until you watch the episode and you realize, okay, it is on the nose, but it kind of should be for what's going on. It's all about the context of it, right? People have, let me just say, lately been being way too simplistic about allegory in Star Trek. And talking about Star Trek like every episode is just an allegory, that's not true. And social commentary and allegory are not necessarily the same thing. You can do social commentary through allegory, but you can also do it through just really inventive science fiction situations, where sometimes it is a straight direct allegory, and sometimes it's just a really interesting what-if statement. It's as much about human condition and how human beings respond to situations, and how enlightened or not we're able to be about things. That's what Star Trek is about. So when people go, well, it's supposed to be an allegory, you can't just come right out and go, here's a... And I'm sympathetic to why people felt this way, but bear with me. You can't go... People are saying you can't go, let's have these two warring factions and then make it look a lot like where we're at now, where people are afraid that America's going to fall apart and that we're going to have a civil war and that's going to lead to chaos. And then Pike comes in and says, look, this happened in our history, and here is some footage of what will happen to you if you continue on in this path. Yeah, that's exactly how TOS would have handled it. Keep in mind that we had a lot of on-the-nose allegory in original series. It's a lot more about how it's presented in the attitude of the arguments. So, yeah, there is heavy-handed stuff in TOS, don't get me wrong, but much of the time, it's making an argument, if it is arguing for one side or another, before it's preaching to the choir or saying you're an idiot if you don't agree with this. And I think there is a huge difference between those things. But also, what was the allegory of the Nazi planet? Like, it's just Nazis. Like, we had actual Nazis on an alien planet that got there because of a captain who decided that was and like, it's ludicrous, but it's a good episode, that was what he needed to bring to that planet to solve a problem. And it needed fascism, he decided. Obviously, he was wrong about that. You had Romans and bread and circuses that were just updated to the 1960s and were televising gladiatorial games. You had all of these Earth-like planets that were not allegory, but just totally on-the-nose things that read enough like allegory in the 60s to get away with it because it was still happening on another planet and not here, but it was still exactly the things that we were dealing with. I just think it's different than... And I don't know, there's just something kind of, like, kitschy and fun about some of that. It's also not taking itself too seriously. There's a big difference between that and Picard doing a time travel story where they go back and to, like, vilify ICE agents and stuff. That's where it was too on the nose. But, you know... If that had been handled in a more thoughtful way, I still might not have minded it. This is another place where I say you've got to just look at it as a straight-up reboot. We've really slid the timeline for Star Trek with this show, and with these shows in general, where the eugenics wars just don't happen in 1996 anymore. It's sometime in the 21st century. I appreciate that Pike lays out what the actual timeline is now, that it's revised. It's been totally retconned. He says we have... a second American Civil War. That's new to the canon. We've never had that before. I don't mind it. I think it makes some kind of sense. And then, I'm losing my voice. I just did a 2-hour rewind last night, so I'll call it quits here in a little bit. But I didn't mean to talk this long, but I have a lot to say about this. So we have a second American Civil War, and then we have the eugenics wars, and then we have World War III, and after that, it's more or less what regular Star Trek canon did with it. But or really from World War III on, there's a curious thing in Picard season 2 where there is in 2024 a Manila envelope with that Sung has in, I think, the last episode, that's the Khan project, and I assumed he's like resurrecting science and ideas that Khan was using. But I'm actually thinking now that my wife was right when she told me, no, I think they've decided that happens later, and that Khan is a direct, like, descendant of Sung or something. I don't love that, if that's what they're doing. But I don't like anything about that show, really. Anyway, so this kind of confirmed that, but also this is not the first time we've done that. Even Voyager and Enterprise play real fast and loose with when exactly the eugenics wars happen, because we have to kind of walk this weird line between dealing with the continuity we have already with Star Trek, which was originally propelled from the 1960s, and extrapolating from what's happening now, because good science fiction does that, but it's harder to do that when you already have a canon established and you started from the 1960s. We're already almost 60 years from that date, and so you do kind of tie your hands behind your back if you technologically and idea-wise you're stuck with the 60s. So I kind of sympathize, but that's why I kind of want this to just straight on reboot. And you have two options with Star Trek. You either reboot or you go to the future. That's how you extrapolate from now. We're stuck in prequel territory. We can't get out of it. And, so, I mean, this isn't exactly what I would have wanted, but it's fun, and I'm enjoying it. Rainbow Nightmare, they seem like they're usually the same plot. The crew are told not to directly intervene, and they find a solution around it. That is true. Yeah. Brandon, did you watch this? Brandon Hambry, did you watch this with Sarah, and did she like it? Sarah did like it, and I wasn't sure if she would. I told her, like, you're going to have to see this, and she was trepidatious just like I was. She only watched Picard because it was Patrick Stewart and continuing the Star Trek that with TNG that she was most engaged with, and even though it was terrible all the way through, she kind of just had to know, so she kept watching it. She had no intention of continuing Discovery past season 3, and she was like, this isn't Star Trek, and even when they're adding characters I know, I don't care enough to go back to it. So she wasn't going to watch this either, and I saw it and was like, you have to, and she was like, okay, I'll try it. I don't know how she'd feel about it. She said she's just glad it's not cynical. She said it's better than the Enterprise pilot. She hates the Enterprise pilot. She doesn't like what they do to the Vulcans in that show, in really throwing them under the bus and saying that they hold Earth back and don't want us to make progress. She just never bought that. That always seemed really, I don't know if reductive is the right word, but like I never bought into that either. And I like how this even kind of makes fun of that a little bit, if I'm reading it right. There's this great bit, a lot of just really nice banter and fun, kind of subtle comedic lines in this, where there's this great bit where somebody says the Vulcans invented first contact, and Pike says, as they never cease to remind us, and I thought that was pretty great. Busted Sim, why is Picard still so distant and alone? Not because he's a professional who understands the dynamics of working relationships and command. Nope, gotta be some tragedy. Like being stabbed wasn't enough. Yeah, exactly. You gotta, and I don't want to talk too much about Picard, and I'm probably not going to do a spoiler cast or anything on that show, because it's been a little while, and I don't want to have to rewatch it, and it will just be me rambling and ranting real hard, which might be fun for someone, but I don't I don't want to deal with it. Red Letter Media has done a good enough job with that. I don't think there's any reason for me to weigh in on that as well. But I will just say, since you left that comment, that it's even worse than he's got to have even more of a tragic backstory that we didn't know about. Because it doesn't even make sense. Like, what they say with Picard, and that spoilers for this, is that his mother had a mental illness and committed suicide, and he's guilt-ridden about it to the point of repressing the memory, doesn't even remember seeing her hang herself. But he feels guilty about it, and that's why he became a starship captain, I guess, as like some sort of penance in, like, subconsciously in the back of his mind, and it's why he can't get close to people, even though they ignore all the times where he got close to people. There's this whole thing about how he can't handle sending people off to die, even though he totally can and has done it numerous times. It doesn't remember lessons. His girlfriend in that, who is Nella Darren, the reason they break up is because he sends her on a mission because she's the right person for the job. She almost dies, and he's afraid that he can't send her in again because they're so close, and it's a conflict of interest. So he quits dating her. But before that, he put her in harm's way. What are they talking about? Senior Sticks also, I guess, Sung the villain, mad science of the Star Trek universe. Yeah, he's, in a weird way, he's almost like the Emperor in Star Wars at this point, except there's, like, several of them, and they're all the same character, and they all look exactly like Brent Spiner, and not one time has any of them talked about being married and having children. I don't know what's happening. AMC, even though I'd only consider myself an intermediary Trek fan, I'm really excited about seeing Cap. So happy about good new Trek. Yeah, me too. And, yeah, thanks for that. I hope it stays good. I hope it at least stays fun. The second episode, I'll do a little bit of spoilers for that here, if folks don't mind. If you do, just stop watching. But anyway, the only thing I'll say about that is I'm a little bit worried that two does not a pattern make, but I am a little bit worried that we might end up with these kinds of fun setups where we can't exactly stick the landing. You have that to some degree with the first episode. Once we get past the conceit, the situation on the planet works well enough, but I don't buy the premise, like I said, of these aliens can reverse engineer warp technology just because they saw it in the sky. I much preferred what we thought it was earlier in the episode, where Spock says it's possible that you could end up with the same technology that we did from the atom bomb, in some other way. It's just never happened that way before. Like I really liked the idea that every culture, as far as we know, has created warp drive for space travel. But it's possible it could be developed for something destructive. I love that idea. And then it turns out that's not what it is at all. They saw us use it for space travel, and then they reverse engineered it and made it a bomb. That's different than they developed it that way in the first place. So that was kind of unfortunate. They didn't quite stick the landing with that idea. That second episode, you have this really contrived comet that is kind of a ship. It's this... And we've done this sort of thing before, too, where you have, like, a planet or a comet that is disguised that way, but actually turns out to be technology. And you've got this great kind of hook, just like the warp bomb hook. And I love the sting in the music there, where he's like, Spock, it is not a warp drive, it is a warp bomb. Da-da-da! And then commercial. It's great. You get that the second episode, where Pike says, Spock, does that asteroid have shields? Or have you ever seen an asteroid that has shields? And then, like, that's your big teaser. That's awesome. And then that asteroid, it turns out this is so convenient, just because Pike is still dealing with his premonitions of the future and trying to decide what he's going to do about that. and he goes to a good character arc about it in the first episode. I didn't think we needed to really keep talking about it in the second episode, as hard as we did, but whatever. But this asteroid is hurtling toward a planet, and we think it's going to destroy it. And then it turns out that everything it does in the episode, it turns out that it was actually benevolent and was not going to destroy the people on the planet, and or at least not intentionally, and that all of its actions were because it too could see the future. Gee, what are the odds of that? And what are the odds that Pike is the captain that dealt with that? So I hope that we actually are able to start sticking the landings with some of these science fiction ideas, and they don't end up too contrived or convoluted in the first place. It is looking a little bit too much like the few planet things that we've done in the '09 movies, where it sort of looks like TOS episodes, but really oversimplified, and yeah, I don't know. Hopefully they get a little bit better at that. But I love the Orville, and the Orville sometimes also has that problem. Cinna Arts, don't know if you talked about it, but do you think Picard Season 3 essentially could become another attempt to end the TNG era? Well, it's very clearly going to be that, but what I thought you were going to ask is it going to look more like TNG after this? Because I think that's what's going to happen with that. I guess we'll find out. But I'm wondering if... It's hard to know. I'm wondering if this show is just a totally different approach to Star Trek, ignoring what they've done before, and they're going to keep doing the stuff they're doing before, and this is our one outlet for TOS-type storytelling, or if this is the new direction. And if it is, in an attempt to bring a new audience and save this franchise, because I still say they've got to be hemorrhaging money. I don't know how the show looks this good. I kind of thought it would look a little cheap. I don't know how they had enough money lying around to make this look as good as it does. We know the ratings haven't been good. We know people, Paramount Plus, or at least it doesn't, I guess we don't know this for sure. Paramount Plus does not seem to be selling well. Whenever they put up posts on Facebook and YouTube, it doesn't seem like anybody cares. I'm not buying that a lot of people are really subscribed to that and paying for that. They lost a lot of money in the Netflix deal. They couldn't get people overseas to take Lower Decks. Like, they've had huge problems. And I don't know how they were able to greenlight a show that looks this good. It's the prettiest of them. And so I'm thinking that they're going, finally we have to make Star Trek look like Star Trek, so that maybe we can finally get merchandisers to start actually selling product again. Because people haven't been making Discovery and Picard stuff. The rumor was that with the first season of Picard, they went to uniforms that looked a little bit more like the TNG uniforms, just so that merchandisers would actually sell stuff, and then they still didn't, because the main characters weren't on a starship, and they weren't wearing uniforms, and so Star Trek fans weren't going to buy the stuff. Star Trek was a cash cow for Paramount for years and years, and it hasn't been as much that lately, because the new stuff, they can't really do anything with. It doesn't look like Star Trek. So maybe that's going to be a strategy, and maybe the last season of Picard will suddenly just look a lot more like TNG, or like the TNG movies, and be told like that. That's what I'm hoping, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I honestly will take even, like, pandery fan service over what we've been having. Like, throw me a bone. I don't know. I think that's definitely a big possibility. And so the question is that desperation, or is it what somebody earlier suggested, where we're finally seeing differences because of the Paramount CBS remerger? Indiana Trek Playmates just got the Trek figure license back. Yeah, I know, which really surprised me, and I'm kind of excited about that. I'm excited for them to make some figures that they never did before. I have a big collection of those. I'd like to start buying those again. But they're making Discovery characters, and I probably won't buy those. But they'll probably make Strange New Worlds characters, and I will buy that. This will be, I probably said this earlier, this will be the first new Star Trek show I felt the need to buy. I'm not spending money on Discovery Picard. Senior Sticks Enterprise also had Soong? Yeah, they did, and that was interesting. But now we have a proto Soong even before that one, who's doing more or less the same thing that Soong was doing. It's very silly. Raymond Nightmare, Mike says somebody has to be watching it given how many shows they're making. Halo was a success, evidently. My cat is sitting on my lap. I like it. She's so cute. Does Oracle do that? Yeah, occasionally she does. That comment took a turn. Yeah, it's unless there's some other explanation that nobody understands for their strategy in just pumping out content when it doesn't feel like anybody's watching it. But maybe they are. It just doesn't seem like it, certainly with Star Trek. Anyway, somehow I've been going on for an hour and 15 minutes. Busted Sim still looks more like Tron to me than Trek. All those runner lights. I don't know. I don't think it looks like Tron, but I'm with you that the runner lights are maybe kind of overkill. But I like the lighting a lot. I think it's hilarious how huge Pike's quarters are. He's got like a hibachi grill in his quarters and this huge table. Apparently they put that in. So like, I guess again, you have to look at it like a reboot, because the Enterprise got a lot smaller when you got to Kirk's era. Everybody's quarters, like the quarters in this look almost bigger than in TNG. It's preposterous. But apparently they put that in because Anson Mount liked making. I think what I read was that Anson Mount kind of like making food for people, and when they're standing around talking about stuff and strategizing, so they wanted to build that into the character, which I think is kind of cool. Like, it seems like they're just building Pike around Anson Mount. It's like we're learning a lot about this actor just through what they're doing with Pike, and then mixing that with what little we had about Pike in the first place. He's riding horses and stuff. At the beginning of this, with the non-spoiler part, I didn't want to spoil this, but we do have Robert April in this show. And I guess they've decided that in this, he is a former captain of the Enterprise, like he was in original continuity. They don't blatantly say it was the Enterprise, but we know that Robert April commanded the Enterprise, so maybe this is too much to assume. But the assumption I made was that Pike was his first officer on the Enterprise, and then he takes the Enterprise. And I didn't think he served on the Enterprise before he got it, but I'm not sure if there's anything that contradicts that. But again, I don't care really. There is apparently a super chat, but guys, I'm not. Oh, there it is. I did get to see this one. Good. Let me know if there is any other super chats that I missed. Senior Sticks, $2 super chat. Sam Kirk is the guy from Galaxy Quest. Oh my goodness, that is who that is. I knew I recognized him, but I didn't realize that until you said that. Yeah, that's awesome. That's good casting too. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with him. Second episode still doesn't do anything with number one, and she's the first officer. So I'm hoping that we start really developing her character pretty soon. I hope that third episode is maybe a number one episode. They've given her a name now. Her name is Una, and I'm fine with that. It's gonna be weird reconciling continuity in my head. I don't mean to make too big of a deal out of that. Like I said, it's easy for me to enjoy this if I just look at it as a full-on reboot. Even with the Discovery stuff we're saddled with, like, they named a shuttlecraft after Stamets. Stop it. I hate that guy. It's fine. He's presumed dead. He's like a hero. But I hate that guy. Anyway, so the reason I say it's difficult to reconcile continuity a little bit is because a lot of the fun for me with Star Trek has always been the just breadth of world building and more or less decent continuity that is that's all pretty cohesive. There's, even before Enterprise, there's obviously gaffes and mistakes and things, but it's more or less pretty coherent and fits pretty well, and I've always appreciated that about it, and it's fun just to memorize the details and have a good sense of this working world. And NuTrek has kind of ruined all of that if you have to consider it all canon, and that kind of hurt my feelings. Because even if it was bad but fit and made sense, it'd be fun to have a reason to memorize stuff about it. I'm a geek. It's what I like to do with Star Trek. This show is going to have that for me, and I'm going to have to think of it as a separate entity with some things that I would love to be canonical. Like, I'm fine with First Contact, with number one's name being Una. Just like Uhura is Nyota now, even though she was never given that name in the canon before the reboot with 09. She had it in the books, and Roddenberry said that canonically that's supposed to be her name, but we just never heard it on screen. So, like, yeah, her name is Nyota, that's fine. I guess I'm going to think of number one now, if I keep liking the show, as Una, even though technically not in the continuity that makes sense together at all. So it's sticky, it's going to blow my brain up. I guess Star Trek is in more of a Star Wars place now, where with the EU, even the old EU, you had everything was canon, but there had to have been a lot of things that contradicted each other that you had to just sort of live with. And now we've got that with Star Trek, except we didn't even have to go to an EU. Like, we've got books and things too, but they're not technically canon. You have like a book canon that's canon with itself and regular continuity, but screen continuity isn't canon with it, if that makes any sense. Now we've got this problem with screen canon, and I don't know. That's disappointing to me. Okay, so we now have some bots coming in the chat, so that's annoying. And I'm going to go ahead and get going. Indiana Trekker, you aren't missing anything, Cap, about Picard Season 2. No, I watched Picard Season 2, all of it, and I wish I had missed it. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed my thoughts on the first couple episodes of Strange New Worlds, and I will probably come back and do a spoiler cast at the end of the season. Unless it just crashes and burns, and then if it's not fun to talk about, I probably won't do it. I don't want to say I'll, moving forward, only talk about things I like, because I'm not doing that. But with NuTrek, I'm picking and choosing my battles here. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you again tomorrow night. We're doing a request at 10 Central on Dawn of the Dead, the original Dawn of the Dead. So look forward to that. I've never seen it before. I'm going to go ahead and watch that here after I'm done with this. And then Thursday night is a brand new Captain Logan show. I say brand new. I shouldn't say that. It's live. Of course, it's new. But we have a live Captain Logan show at 8 Central on Thursday. In the meantime,